17 other students are also very pleased that we're on the home stretch. 2 are still a little apprehensive. Emma has thought very carefully this year about the impact of media on the self-perception that adolescent girls have. And as the father of 3 daughters, Emma's topic has had a very personal meaning to me. But as a Christian, it has reminded me of St. Paul's injunction to us to take every thought into captivity and subject it to the transforming love of Christ. And I am so pleased with the work that she has done this year, the hard work that she has done to prepare for this. Very proud of how she's done. And I hope that you are all going to enjoy hearing her presentation and her defense as much as I have helped her work through this year. Her panel is Ms. Kate Friedrichs, her advisor, who is on our humanities department, Ms. Sunny Espinette, who is in our science department, Mrs. Sarah Jacks, who is a licensed Christian counselor. Let's pray, Emma, and then you're going to come up. Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank you for all of the good gifts that you have placed in Emma, for the care and the thought and concern that she has poured into this presentation this year. I ask that as she presents to us, you would give her grace, clarity of thought, peace in her heart, and give us ears to hear what she would say to us. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Come on up, Emma.
Most everyone has known someone or has struggled with a mental illness at some point in their life. In fact, 1 in 5 people globally are currently battling with some sort of mental illness at this moment. But what most people do not realize is that the mental illness that is responsible for the highest fatality rate comes from an unhealthy relationship with food. From anyone struggling with a poor body image to a very serious eating disorder, it can seem like a daily battle to fight against the self-deprecating thoughts that come with viewing modern-day media's ideal body image. The harm coming specifically from the way the female body is portrayed, often being as heavily edited in order to look as thin and desirable as possible. Eating disorders in adolescent girls are encouraged by the malnourished body image that is promoted in modern-day media. And therefore, the media has a moral obligation to instead represent healthier, more diverse body types. The APA defines an eating disorder as a psychological disorder that is characterized by abnormal or disruptive eating habits. There are 2 main types of eating disorders. The first is anorexia nervosa, which is also known as the self-starvation syndrome. An individual who struggles with anorexia will restrict the amount of food that they intake in order to either retain the body size that they already have and wish to keep, or to achieve a smaller body size that they deem is desirable. Symptoms of anorexia include dizziness, fatigue, and most noticeably, extreme weight loss. The second type of eating disorder is known as bulimia nervosa, which is also known as the binge and purge syndrome. An individual who struggles with bulimia will often take part in inappropriate compensatory behaviors, such as self-induced vomiting, in order to get rid of the contents that they had just eaten. Like someone who struggles with anorexia, someone who has been diagnosed with bulimia will also experience heavy dizziness, fatigue, extreme weight loss, but with the added additional symptoms of stomach and esophageal irritation due from constantly throwing up. The ratio of men to women who struggle with an eating disorder is 1 to 10. So for every 1 man who is diagnosed with an eating disorder, 10 women have previously been. The reason for this being is that there is a difference in the societal role that places expectations on what a man's body should look like versus what a woman's body should look like. For the man, they're expected to be much more toned, strong, and muscular than a woman is, who is expected to be a lot smaller than the man. For this reason, it is not as common for a man to develop an eating disorder, since symptoms of anorexia and bulimia both include losing a large amount of weight, which does not often result in the type of body that most men wish to have. Many people may wonder if obesity should be classified as an eating disorder. Although someone who is obese and someone who struggles with anorexia or bulimia both have an unhealthy relationship with food. The mental dysfunction that is seen in someone who has been diagnosed with an eating disorder is not seen in someone who is obese. And since obesity cannot be classified as a mental disorder, it cannot be classified as an eating disorder. Many people may wonder, what causes an eating disorder to form in the first place? Well, considering modern day media, there are two major components that influence the way a young girl views her own body. And this is through advertising and social media. As far as advertising goes, there is no denying the enormous effect it has on a young woman's body image. And this can be primarily through clothing brands and companies or modeling agencies that focus their merchandise primarily on the female body or physique. Overall, advertising can promote a false perfection or a promised aesthetic that will come if one chooses to take part in buying a company's merchandise. Social media can also be very harmful to a young woman's mental health if it is used in a poor way. Here, young women can get ideas and advice from their family, friends, online strangers, or even celebrities that they look up to about what they think the ideal body looks like that is dependent on how they use their social media platform. Now, moving forward, it is important to recognize how great of a threat modern day media poses to a young woman's body image. As far as advertising and retailers go, the most evident ways that clothing brands can be non-inclusive of the variety of body types is by only providing a one-size-fits-all clothing line. When certain stores such as Brandy Melville will only provide a one-size-fits-all clothing line, which has historically fit only thin and smaller bodies, they are sending a message that this is the only body type that is worthy to wear their merchandise. This can also go for other clothing companies that may provide sizes from extra small to extra large, but only tend to focus on those extra small sizes when thinking of who should showcase their clothing as far as their models go. In extreme cases, this can promote eating disorders in young women who believe that they need to conform to this idea of beauty in order to be accepted and loved. There is also major concern with how modeling agencies view and promote the perfect female physique. When most people think of modeling, their minds go to certain companies, such as Victoria's Secret, who is famous for their fashion shows. These models come from certain agencies, such as Ford or Elite, and most people are unaware of the mental, emotional, and physical abuse these young women go through every day just by doing their job. Cindy Leave, who was an editor for Glamour magazine, was very transparent about how things were run behind the modeling stage. She said that it was not uncommon at all to see a young woman go straight from gracing the modeling stage one minute to being transported to the back of an ambulance the next, because she passed out from either malnourishment or pure exhaustion. Social media is also a huge part of many young women's lives. In fact, up to 80% of young women are on social media every single day. However, there are some subcultures of social media that have been proven to be very harmful to a young woman's mental health surrounding her body. One of these is known as the diet culture. The diet culture attempts to give a temporary solution to get what society deems is the ideal body type. However, a diet is not a permanent lifestyle change. And often when a young woman comes off of a diet, she will resort to binge eating in order to make up for the foods that she was not able to eat beforehand while she was on this diet. This irregular, disruptive eating patterns are akin to that of someone who struggles with an eating disorder and can create bad habits in a young woman who is trying to create good habits as far as her eating. Overall, the diet culture can give a temporary solution to a much deeper rooted issue of body dysmorphia. Another subculture of social media that can be very harmful for young women is known as Thinspo, which is short for thin inspiration. This consists of many images and writings, often written and posted by young women for other women to encourage them in their disordered eating ways. Most websites will do their best to block this harmful content, but some apps such as Tumblr do not filter out any of this imagery. This can be very dangerous for young women who are looking to recover from their eating disorder and might come across these images accidentally, or for young women who are not looking to recover and use these images to aid them further in their disordered eating ways. Now, knowing how harmful social media and advertising can be for the viewer, how do we as a society fix this problem? First of all, it begins with not revolving all female catered media around what their body looks like. When women go see media, and this can be online or by picking up a magazine, and all they see is content that is revolved around what their body looks like, whether this is positive or negative, it can send a message that what the woman's body looks like is what determines her worth. However, when female bodies are to be talked about in media, it is important for a variety of healthy, thin, more medium, and larger bodies to be displayed, not ones that are gauntly thin or morbidly obese. And just as severely malnourished bodies should not be glorified in the media, neither should heavily overweight bodies be. Both body types are unhealthy, and it is dangerous to promote to a viewer who may have one of these body types that they are healthy, when in fact having such a body can lead to a shorter lifespan overall or just lessen their quality of life. As far as clothing companies and retailers go, a great way for them to start to be more inclusive of the variety of body types is by ditching the one-size-fits-all mentality. And for those clothing companies that do provide sizes from extra small to extra large, for them to start focusing on those other sizes besides extra small when looking at who should showcase their clothing. Athleta and Fabletics are both athletic apparel brands that do their best to bring body positivity into what they do. Singer and songwriter Demi Lovato, who has been open about her own struggles with anorexia, worked with Fabletics and said that I had to start loving myself for who I was. And that began when I quit comparing myself to those who I thought were thinner than me. Overall, Athleta and Fabletics give many young women a chance to see what clothing would look like on a body that more accurately represents their own. And this is a chance that is not given to them a lot in the media. Modeling agencies are far from being perfect role models for young women. However, certain agencies, such as Seattle Refined, have made it their goal to bring body positivity into what they do. They write on their website, "It is our goal to celebrate a whole living body diversity, and we recognize that this can come in many different shapes and sizes." First and foremost, a modeling agency's priority should be to make sure that those whom they employ are not suffering under their care, and that their models and employees are in a good mental, physical, and emotional state of mind before going out on the runway. For Christians, it is even more important to care to promote a healthy body type. First of all, it is important to note that an individual who is struggling with an eating disorder is not continuously sinning against God by treating her body in this way. In order for her to have gotten to this point, she had to have been told by some outside source, whether this be the media or her friends who were influenced by the media, that her body was not good enough the way it was, and that she needed to change in order to be accepted and loved. However, God does call us to be content with our bodies. Paul says in Philippians 4:11 that I am not in want, but instead I choose to be content in whatever circumstance God has put me in. And we should strive to be like Paul in this way, when concerning being content with our own body image. God also calls us to love our bodies and to treat them well, for they are temples that are to be used to glorify Him. And we cannot do this to its fullest extent if we are not treating our temples or our bodies in a good manner. Lastly, God also calls us to minister to those around us. Jesus says that the second greatest commandment is to love thy neighbor as thyself. And as simple as this may sound, it is very relevant to how we deal with young women and with eating disorders inside the Christian community and outside the Christian community. These young women need support coming from them, from someone who either has been there or cares about them, to walk alongside them to the path to recovery because of the high chance of relapse along the way. Now, some businesses may say that having this thin, malnourished woman on the cover of their merchandise or advertising is what helps create sales. Is this just a smart business tactic, or is it denying morality in order for personal gain? However smart this business tactic may be, when every single company chooses to promote an unhealthy image of a young woman, it can put at risk the mental health of the young minds that make up the viewership. It can put at risk the mental health of the young minds that make up the viewership. Most people, when they see a young, thin, malnourished woman on the cover of a magazine who looks beautiful and happy with her own body, it is easy for them to imagine themselves as happy with their bodies as this woman looks with hers. It is an illusion, but it has been proven to work nonetheless. However, studies have shown that when the mental health of a society is flourishing, so does the society overall. Citizens will perform better at their jobs, they will be kinder to one another, and overall, the quality of life will increase greatly. In order for this to happen, certain corporations and advertising businesses need to be able to make a short-term sacrifice in order to reap a long-term reward. This short-term sacrifice being maybe see a loss in a couple sales because these people are not getting the influence of the malnourished body type that they are used to. However, the long-term reward could be that people start to instead want to see a more variety of healthy body types in the media. And soon, this can become the ideal body. In conclusion, it will take time to break down the cultural stereotype that thin is equivalent to beautiful. However, steps are being made in the right direction. The end utopian goal that some people may see in their mind of everyone in society being completely happy and satisfied with their body will never be reached. Because of man's sinful nature, he will always be at strife in some way with his own body. However, that does not mean that it is futile to try. And this can be done by showing young women who may struggle with an eating disorder that their bodies are not to be picked apart for flaws, but instead cherished as gifts from God. Thank you.
All right, we'll begin with the panel session.
Great job, Emma. We're all really proud of you.
Thank you.
If eating disorders are a mental illness that often coincides with or even is the result of other mental illnesses, such as OCD or anxiety, what evidence is there that changing advertising will have any effect?
I think that for other mental illnesses, such as OCD, anxiety, and depression, a young woman who may have one of these mental illnesses, this is not the root of her problem because these mental illnesses do not revolve around body dysmorphia in many ways. Instead, I think they're more of a precursor or something that makes a young woman more susceptible to developing an eating disorder. Like we see someone who may have a history with lung cancer in their family, this does not inherently mean that they will develop lung cancer at some point in their life, but it does mean that smoking a cigarette may indeed leave them at a more high risk than most people may be to developing lung cancer. And this can be like someone who may have a perfectionistic personality or struggle with OCD or anxiety or depression and may be exposed to this cigarette or this type of media. And that can lead her more at a higher risk for developing an eating disorder later in life.
Excellent job, Emma.
Thank you.
How has the diagnosis rate of eating disorder changed over time, specifically in the last 50 years?
In my research, I noticed that there was an uptick in eating disorder, the eating disorder count, and I believe that this does have to do with the introduction of media and social media being at our disposal at almost any given point. And we now not only have the influence of our peers like beforehand, before the internet was invented and everything, but now we have our peers who are being influenced by the media and then firsthand exposure from the media as well. And so I think this is why we have seen an uprise in not only eating disorders, but also other mental illnesses like OCD, depression, and anxiety.
Hi, Emma. What is the most valuable insight you've developed through this research, and how has this insight, if at all, changed your behavior personally?
I think for me, the biggest insight I've had is just recognizing how altered and how fake the media can be sometimes, and how often the media doesn't depict what reality is. And we have to be careful when we are viewing this media not to get too influenced in a way that we start to believe that everything that we see is real. And so for me personally, I think that I have realized and taken everything that I've seen in the media with a grain of salt and been like trying to put it against God's word and what he says about my body. And this has helped me in my own struggles with body dysmorphia myself. And I think as long as we are healthy people and we are taking care of our bodies in a good way that honors God, then we can be content with our bodies in this way.
Thank you. My second question, how does this research inform religious teaching on restrictive practices during Lent or the spiritual discipline of fasting?
I think concerning Lent, that is different from self-starvation, because the starvation that we see in Lent is supposed to be giving up food in order to spend more time with God and to, at the end goal, glorify him and become closer with him. However, as we see in someone with an eating disorder who will restrict the amount of food that they intake, this is more of a self-glorifying thing in a way. And it glorifies either other people or yourself and not God, because this is not the way that God intended you to treat your body. And so I believe that with Lent, it should be adults who participate in fasting as far as Lent, because young women still need nutrients and food to grow and to sustain life. And I think that this could be very dangerous if young women are pushed to fast on Lent, when this could lead to disordered eating patterns, even if it is technically meant to glorify God. So I think for young women who may be looking to participate in Lent, a more healthy outlook on it should be maybe giving up sugar or carbs or some form of entertainment that could instead that time be used to spend time with God and glorify him, rather than unknowingly create disordered eating patterns in oneself. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you consider disordered eating enough of a public health crisis to compel the government to act by considering legislation to mandate industry reforms?
I don't think that having a malnourished body image promoted in the media is enough for the government to step in. I think this is kind of similar to the cigarette ban that happened a couple years ago, where cigarettes and tobacco products were not allowed to be advertised. This is different because anyone could smoke a cigarette of any sex, religion, race, any of that, and it would harm them. However, viewing a malnourished woman in the media only hurts a small percentage of young women who are susceptible to developing an eating disorder. Not to say that it doesn't matter for those women, but it is not as much of a risk to where this should be regulated, because then that opens the door of, well, what if my body just looks like this and I just want to be represented and I really am healthy? So I think for that, no. But as far as other things that could be harmful for young women, like over-the-counter diet pills that are sold, or something that causes immediate harm and not secondary harm like the media, then that should be regulated more, and not so much as the images in a magazine or social media.
You mentioned that historically, ideal beauty has evolved and taken on different characteristics such as thinness, paleness, roundness. Who or what drives society's conception of ideal beauty?
I think as far as our society goes, what drives the conception of ideal beauty is reflective of what our society worships. So, for example, back in Greece, ancient Greece, what their society worshipped was a man's body, and the man instead of the woman was seen as the ideal form of beauty. And so women took on more of a masculine figure, and they weren't as figured as they are now today and later. So, and then also again in Victorian England era, what was worshipped in that society was being royal. And so young women would want to be very pale, and they would want to have more of a figure. They would want to be more chubby because this embodied having more money to buy food. And so this is what their society worshipped back then. And today, I think what our society worships now is wealth again, and the discipline of self-control. I think we have an idea that when a young woman has a lot of extra money, a lot of extra free time, maybe she doesn't have to work, then she can spend that time working out or doing other activities to better her body, or spend that money on food that tends to be more expensive, the healthy foods are. And so that can be reflective of what we want to emulate. And also the self-control aspect, where young women want to be seen as having this discipline, where it is hard to maintain your body in a way and be healthy. And most of the time people misconstrued being thin with being healthy. And often it can result with this competitive spirit that we have in our society today, where we feel the need to be the best at everything. And so, like with the mental illnesses, like OCD and perfectionism can come with wanting to be the best at everything. And so I think that this can play a role in what our society worships today.
And you mentioned that some members of society, such as advertisers, must sacrifice for the mental health of the whole. To what extent are they morally obligated to do so?
I think that the moral obligation comes in when the advertisers become aware of what they're doing. I think for the most part, probably many advertisers and businessmen aren't exactly aware of what this malnourished body image does to the mental health of young women. I think that they just see the statistics and that, hey, when I post this image on my social media promoting my product, that this is what creates more views and more sales, and that just clicks and makes sense for them. However, this is why it is so important to get the message out that this body image is hurting young viewers, and how we can help is by just being body positive and loving ourselves no matter what our bodies look like. And hopefully we can start to see an increase of more body positivity and a love of bodies that are healthy on the entire spectrum of what they can look like.
Thanks, Emma. As a teenager, which you've managed to make us forget in the last 20 minutes, but you are a teenager. What demographic is most influential as an older teenager to a mother of younger teens? What would you say is the demographic as far as influencers that affects your opinion of yourself, and how could you help us with that?
I think the demographic of like celebrities and stuff that influences our opinion, it would be like, my guess would be singers, probably, models, clothing agencies, or people who work for clothing agencies and model for them. Just famous people overall that are probably in the millennial to Gen Z range.
Mhm.
And I use the example of Demi Lovato in my thesis, because she was, on Disney. She was a Disney star, and many young girls look up to her. And I also use the example of Serena Williams in my paper, who was a tennis player, and she did not have what most people would consider is the normal body type for a tennis player, but still she was successful. And so I think for these young women, it's important to have other young women who have been through what they have been through. And instead of taking the criticism that they may have received in the past and feeling bad about themselves, they can instead use that to bring more light to the situation and bring more body positivity where it's needed.
Thank you, Emma. This paper names commercial advertising as enabling or dismantling improper standards for body image through visual media. How is the use of visual media to advertise in your religious communities, whether church or school, enabled or dismantled improper standards for body image?
I think in our schools and churches, it is a little bit more difficult to see body image being displayed because the end goal of a school and a church is not to focus on the body like advertising is with female clothing, is to look at the body and to, eventually want that clothing is what the advertisers want you to do. So I think for our school and our churches, how we can support more body positivity is just by promoting a healthy image of your body and not so much as focusing on weight or what the body looks like on the outside, but instead just promoting a healthy lifestyle overall to better your own body and to make you healthier, because this is what matters in the long run. Weight doesn't matter as much as long as you are taking care of your body and honoring God in this way with your body.
Emma, you're done with the panel. Now we're going to move on to some audience questions. I'm already moving toward Mrs. Baker. Quickly to remind everyone or to inform everyone of ground rules if you haven't been in before. I'm a super stingy, greedy, materialistic human being, so I always hold on to the microphone and don't let go of it. You get one question, no follow-ups. Try to make the questions as efficient as you possibly can. And seems like there was one other one, and now I've forgotten it because it's day 3. Adults come first. Yes, there we go. Adults come first. Mrs. Baker comes firstest. We'll move down to students if we're able to.
Great job, Emma. I'm really proud of
Thank
you. That's
you.
a great topic. My question is, would you have any suggestions for somebody like me, how I can promote body positivity with young kids, with like 10-year-old girls in the classroom, because I'm with them kind of a long time every day?
I think for promoting body positivity, I think the focus should be taken off for young women or young girls in your case who may not have had time to become self-conscious about their body yet, is to not put focus on what their body looks like necessarily, because whether it's positive or negative, if they start to become aware of their own body, it can lead to negative thoughts from a young age. And so I think what instead should be done is promotion of just healthy eating and just taking care of your body and taking care of it in a way that glorifies God and brings honor to him.
Additional audience questions? Ms. Barber.
Sorry, I'm like looking around. So I love the body positive thing. But at the same time, even just thinking of that, how do you prevent even trying to think of your body in a positive way from it becoming an idol in that way?
Mhm. I think that's definitely a problem, is some people will focus on eating healthy and exercising so much to an extent where their body becomes an idol. And I think that instead of this happening, we need to make sure that we remember that our bodies belong to God and that they are not to be used to bring glory to ourselves or to make other people happy if that is what we are looking to do, but instead to glorify him, and our bodies are a temple that are supposed to be used to glorify and bring praise to him. And so I think that we need to keep this in mind while still treating our body in a healthy and positive way.
Good job, Emma.
Thank
I
you.
had a question. So I have noticed the last year a trend, like you said, with models, companies using models of different sizes. Athleta, obviously, I didn't realize was probably leading that forth, but do you see that trend happening? And in your research, has there been any research done with anorexia and bulimia associated with these companies trying to use models of different sizes?
Yeah, I definitely think so. So in my research, I did try to find companies. I found Athleta and Fabletics as 2 examples, but there were definitely others like Target and Aerie, who are both body positive and wanting to spread this body positive image. And it can be shown in their models that they choose and how their models are not unhealthily in either direction, but instead they're just trying to spread positivity. And so I think that we are moving in a good direction in our society as far as body image. At this point, there still needs to be some work done and some progress made, but some companies are doing a good job at bringing that body positivity into our culture and society today.
A very nice and well-reasoned thesis.
Thank you.
This is a problem. In clinical practice for 40 years, this is a problem. You introduced it, though, from the context of morality in the media. I think morality, the moral obligation is anathema to the media. So you have a real problem and a challenge there. You also present this beautiful solution in a Christian context. But how do you translate that message to a non-Christian, secular, idolatrous culture?
I think as far as the non-Christians go, I think for everyone, due to general revelation, we all have some desire to do good. I mean, obviously, this is corrupted by the fall, but I think for the most part, you can ask a non-Christian and they would say, I don't want females' body images to be harmed by the media. Now, it does come where there is maybe a non-believing businessman who may conduct his advertising in a way that does harm the female body image. And he has been given feedback about this, and he knows that what he is doing is wrong, but he or she still continues to do it anyway. And at this point, the freedom of the advertiser still stands, and he or she can do whatever they want with their media and run their company in the way that they want. So like I said, I don't think this should be, the government should come in this whatsoever and try to control all the advertising and the body types that are shown. However, this is where we do need to come together, non-Christians and Christians alike, and start to be more body positive, so that when eventually young women who do encounter this type of media, because it is inevitable that they will someday, that these young women have truths to fight it with and to be able to recognize that this media is not representing reality and what is a body type that is attainable for most young women. And so I think that's really important when considering non-Christians and how they may conduct their businesses.
Do we have any additional questions from the adult section of the audience? I've got some seniors and some juniors who are anxious to get some questions in. Okay.
Good job on your thesis, first of all.
Thank you.
But I was just wondering if you see it as problematic for someone to see thinness or another body type as attractive or more attractive than another one.
I don't think that it's a problem at all to see a thin body as more attractive, as far as like men who may see and have a preference for thinner women. I don't think that this is a problem whatsoever. I think that the problem comes when men will take their preference and start to emphasize it on other women and say that you need to conform to look like this in order for men to accept you and love you. And I think that that can be very harmful and a negative take on it. And so I think that men can have their preference. You can want to date a thinner woman, but your preferences need to stay within yourself, and they don't need to influence a young woman who may not be in your size preference. And it's okay. And that doesn't need to come onto their body type and you to influence how they look.
Your thesis got me thinking about kind of, especially more in media and like even literature, the way that when we look at our literature and our movies through the Bechdel test, which is, I think it's are there two women that are talking to each other and are not talking about a man? Like, how much is this the media's failure to portray women as complex people as opposed to just showing like thin body types?
I think for the media, we have seen, like this was in my paper, the media as far as movies and like even like action figures and toys that depict women as these women who are curvy at the same time, but still have a thin waist and a flat stomach. And that this is unattainable for most women to achieve. And I think that this can result in women being objectified in media, and how we can start to, if every single woman looks like this, then it can set an unrealistic expectation for young women about what their body should look like. And so I think that this trend, we have started to see a little bit of a variety of body types seen in the media, and it does need to continue because this unrealistic body type of females that has been promoted in media for such a long time isn't healthy for the most part for young women to try to achieve, and it isn't attainable for most women. So
Emma, I loved your thesis. I thought it was very well done.
thank you.
So you focused a lot about how this particular body image affects young women. How do you think it has affected the minds of the young men in our society?
That's a good question. I think that men can still struggle with eating disorders as well. There's that 1 to 10 ratio where for every 10 women, there's still one man that struggles with an eating disorder. And so I think that for what I said, I focused mainly on women's bodies, but it can also apply, the information can also apply for a man and how his body should be used at the same time to glorify God. And it should not be starved or mistreated in any way. As far as them interacting with women who may experience body dysmorphia, I think that they can come alongside women. And as far as people who are like in direct relationships with women, like a husband to his wife, he can affirm her and tell her that he loves her body just the way it is, and that she just needs to be healthy and doesn't need to change for anyone or anything.
So I really love the body positivity movement, and I love that we're starting to appreciate all bodies as beautiful and as God's creation. But at what point do you think it becomes important to step back and stop reminding everyone that their body is beautiful, and instead remind them that their purpose is not to be beautiful, and that they're more than their body.
Right. And yeah, I think this is why women catered media specifically to their gender should not be revolved all around what their bodies look like and how their bodies look, whether it be positive or negative affirmation. And I think that we need to have a healthy balance of setting a foundation, especially for young women, of telling them that this is a healthy way to treat your body and that you don't need to be focused and completely absorbed with how your body looks in order to be happy and healthy in life, and just enforcing those healthy mindsets and healthy habits before they go out into the world and experience what other people think about their bodies. And if this media can not reflect all about what a woman's body looks like, but instead focus on, hobbies or entertainment or some other source that women can still enjoy, but it's not completely revolved around their bodies.
This is the last question.
Hey, Emma, good job.
Thank you.
When Obama was in presidency, his wife, Michelle Obama, implemented into public schools, taking away things such as junk food.
Mhm.
And could that be done more nationwide? And would that help the problem of body image for young girls and for men as well?
I think that I didn't do any research into Michelle Obama and what her process was with that, but I think that it is important for more so than the schools and the churches or like any other kind of influence on young women, but the focus should be on how the parents treat and go about this problem. And I think that for parents who are looking to how they can help their young daughter be more positive with her body, I think they can promote healthy eating and promote self-love of your body in a way where it doesn't become an idol and instead glorifies God with your body.
Emma, you're done. Great job. We're going to have a quick 5-minute break, and then we will have our final thesis defense. Quick 5 minutes, and then back for Eli Tilton.